It's no secret that law school final exams are the most stressful part of 1L year, not the least of which because they are most, if not all, of our grade in a course, and we get very little, if any, direction from our law school professors on how to write these things. So I thought it would be fun to answer some law school final exam questions from Reddit and give you guys my expert law school strategy coach thoughts on it. So if you are interested and curious about law school and how to take your law school grades to the next level, then definitely hit subscribe, tap that notification bell so that you guys can hear about every new law school strategy video I have coming out all the time until the end of time. And if you have a law school final exam season coming up around the corner, then definitely grab the free Beat the Curve guide so that you can take a step-by-step strategical approach to translating all of your hard work into the law school grades that you deserve. So I will link that in the description below. And with that, guys, let's dive in. Kicking it off with question number 1, when should I start studying for final exams? I think this is going to be a rough question to start with. I do not think you guys are going to love my answer to this because my favorite approach to law school studying is to actually begin studying for final exams the very first day of class, meaning that every action we are taking throughout the semester is directly tied to being able to organize the material, internalize the material, and then use it on final exams. But when people refer to studying for final exams, they're usually referring to that 3 to 4 week period before the first final exam actually begins. And so the first thing that I will say is that I really dislike the term studying when we're talking about law school, because that creates a lot of confusion about what in the world we're actually doing with our hours and our days and how we're filling those to get ready for these final exams. And so I think that it is a lot more better. It's a lot better of a service to you guys if we get really clear and articulate what it is we're doing. And so when we're talking about organizing the material, internalizing the material, and applying it on final exams, the most traditional first step is to create an outline. And so you guys may have heard that term before. I have a video right here all about how to build out outlines if you're curious. But what we're looking for is an organization of your reading notes, your class notes, and then any supplement you might be using to make sure that you are getting a sense for how these legal concepts work together, and also what the beginning to deepen the understanding process of what these legal concepts even mean. So in an ideal world, we are finishing our outlines the last day of class. So we're working on them throughout the semester, finishing them the last day of class, which then opens up some really critical time during that quote unquote reading period in between your final exams to actually take another organized and condensed step known as canned answers or rule statements. This is my favorite way to deepen and internalize the information, because now what we're doing is organizing and repeating, but in a very, very strategic way to identify the parent rule statements, the situation-specific rules, understanding where those case containers fit in these legal concepts, and then also building out any analytical checklists that we need to break down these legal rules and be able to apply them on the final exam. And then that final piece is, of course, taking practice exams. And so now that we have the information organized and condensed and deepened our own understanding of it, we can now apply it on a fact pattern or in a practice exam setting. And so I think that is a perfect segue to the next question. Question number 2, should I take my practice exams open book or closed book? Really good question. So just to make sure everybody's on the same page, when we're talking about law school final exams, they can either be open book, meaning you can bring anything into the final exam room with you, or they can be closed book, meaning you can bring nothing into the law school final exam room with you, or they might be somewhere in between. So some law school professors will allow you to bring in one sheet of paper front and back with notes on it, or just your textbook, or just your federal rules of civil procedure or something like that. But generally speaking, we're talking about bringing in resources versus bringing in no resources when you are building out your final exam in the room. So when we're talking about practice exams, it is my very, very strong preference to always take practice exams open book, meaning having your outline next to you, having your canned answers next to you as you're building out your practice exam. The reason for that is because when we're writing a final exam analysis and we're practicing that skill, it is a completely separate skill from internalizing the material. So internalizing the material is happening in the outlining process, it's happening in the canned answer process, but we need to learn and practice and get reps and how to actually apply those legal concepts to a fact pattern. That is a different skill. It's also arguably the hardest skill and the most complex skill. So I would much rather you guys do reps and do them well and have that information next to you before you layer on taking a practice problem and doing it closed book. I would only really do that the day before a final exam, honestly, and that's only if the final exam is going to be closed book. But what you also need to realize is happening is as you are taking a practice problem, open note, you are also in parallel internalizing that material as you go. So they're not two completely separate silos happening independently of one another. But again, the focus when we're taking practice problems is the skill of writing an analysis, is getting those reps in. And so that's what I would prioritize. And then again, only at the end would I even consider layering those two things together. Moving on to question number 3, how important are professor preferences when it comes to grading? So I love this question. And what I would say is that about 85 to 95% of what you're going to get points for on a final exam is going to be universal across all professors, meaning professors give points for the same things 85 to 95% of the time. So that is noting what facts are triggering what legal issues, being able to clearly and correctly state the legal rule that applies for that legal issue. The most important thing, applying the facts of the fact pattern to the rule language to then craft arguments and counter arguments, and then stating a brief conclusion. So that's 85 to 95% of the game. That being said, as we know, law school is graded on a curve, and so those 5 to 15% of the points are definitely things that we want to go after and scoop up if we can. And so that's when professor preferences come into play. And so this can be really tough to figure out because professors, generally speaking, play their cards really close to the vest. They are not open and communicative about what it is they like or not like, dislike on a final exam answer. So you can find out little clues, little pieces of these things, either by things the professor says in class, by going to their office hours and straight up asking them, what does an A answer do that other people in the class do not do? And then also looking at model answers to play detective and see what is the language they're using, what is the structure they're using, what are the arguments that they're making that are repetitive, that are similar across model answers. Now, what I will say is that there are, I would say, 3 professor preferences that are the most common that I see. And one of them is the difference between a shallow fact pattern and a deep fact pattern. So when we talk about a shallow fact pattern, that usually means there are a lot of people, a lot of actors doing a lot of things. You generally tend to see these types of fact patterns in torts or criminal law. And when you see something that is a shallow fact pattern, it tends to be a lot more or put a lot more emphasis on spotting legal issues than doing an incredibly in-depth analysis. The analysis will always be the most important part, but we're going to likely lean into spotting more issues than going argument, counter argument as deep as we can on every single one. On the opposite side of the spectrum, when you have classes like contracts or constitutional law or civil procedure, you generally will have deep fact patterns, meaning we are going all the way down the rabbit hole, argument and counter argument, rather than just hitting the issues and moving on. The second type of professor preference that I see a lot of the time is when professors either feel strongly about policy arguments or not strongly about policy arguments. So when we talk about policy arguments, I am referring to sort of the opposite of legal arguments. So legal arguments are the black letter law rules that you guys are learning in class. So negligence is duty, breach, causation, damages. A policy argument will be like a rationale or a reasoning for why we have the legal rule that we have, right? So it could be the historical context for or the rationale for why we have a reasonable person standard for the duty element of negligence. So if a professor has communicated that he or she feels strongly about policy arguments, we're going to lean further into those than we otherwise might. And then the third thing that I see as a professor preference that comes up a lot are professors that feel really strongly or not about case analysis. And so when I say case analysis, what I mean is that as we are reading through the fact pattern of an issue spotter exam, we are looking for facts that are similar to facts and cases that we have read in class. And what that allows us to then do is to take that case that we read in class and the fact pattern and say, hey, this fact pattern should come out the same as this case because the facts are similar, or this fact pattern should come out differently than this case because the facts are dissimilar. So it's going a second layer down and really analogizing or distinguishing the facts from your fact pattern from the facts of cases that you guys have read in class. So those are the three professor preferences I see the most often. But yes, pay attention to those things because they can be the difference in terms of going from a B+ to an A- or an A- to an A. Next question. How long should I be studying each day for final exams? So this is a really interesting question because I was just talking about this with a student, and he shared with me a study that said that we are capable of 4 to 5 hours per day of really intense, focused time, thinking time. And so when I was thinking back to how many hours I actually spent each day I was preparing for final exams, I was sort of in the mindset of I'm going to do this all day. I'm going to go all out. And in my mind, that was like 10 to 12 hours of studying per day. But realistically, I think that was probably closer to about 6 to 7.5. So when we're talking about preparing for final exams, I like to think about breaking up those days into 3 chunks. So depending on how long you're able to stay focused, this could look a little bit different for you, but it could be around 2.5-hour chunks 3 times, right? A 2.5-hour chunk in the morning, take a break, a 2.5-hour chunk in the afternoon, take a break, a 2.5-hour chunk in the evening, take a break, and that gets you to your about 7.5 hours. You could also make those chunks smaller, 2-hour chunks each, and then see how you're feeling if you want to keep going. But I think the important thing to also keep in mind is that the final exam period in law school is long. It's usually at least 2.5, sometimes even 3 weeks. So you're going to get more and more and more fatigued as you go. And so what I always like to tell my students is to go harder at the beginning of that final exam period so that you can front load as much of the work and as much of the preparation as possible, knowing that you're going to get tired and you're not going to be able to go as long as you were at the beginning of the final exam period. So if you can get 7.5 hours of really good focused study time, outlines, canned answers, practice problems, you're going to do your future self a huge favor when you are in the 2nd or 3rd week of final exams and you're napping 7.5 hours. I'm just kidding. But when you are taking a lot more time off and going a lot more slowly. Next question. Ooh, I like this one. What is your best piece of final exam advice? Okay, so I have one I feel very strongly about that I always put in all caps for my students, which is to never talk about the final exam after the final exam. And I know, you guys will, I did, it will backfire and be terrible. But if anybody hears this and can really take it to heart, please keep your earbuds in, run out of that room, don't make eye contact with anybody, don't talk to anybody about the final exam. The reason is because we think that in talking about the final exam, we're going to get reassurance that we did okay. We're going to think that people are going to repeat back to us what we wrote on the exam, and it's going to help boost our confidence. Inevitably, that is not what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that somebody is going to have spotted an issue you didn't spot. They're going to have made an argument you didn't make. They're going to have come to a conclusion that you didn't come to. And then you are going to proceed to convince yourself that you totally bombed the exam, that you're a complete failure. And that negative spiraling energy is going to perpetuate itself into all of the final exams that you have coming up. It's going to eat away at your confidence. It's going to eat away at your energy. It's going to eat away at your focus. And so I cannot stress this enough. Please do not talk to anybody about the final exam, because even if it's your last final exam, then you're just going to spend the next 6 weeks convincing yourself that you failed and you did terribly, when in fact you could have gotten the highest grade in the class. Because the beauty of law school final exams is that you are accumulating points as you write them. They're not taking away points. So even if somebody did spot an issue, did make an argument, did come to a conclusion that you didn't come to, and theirs was quote unquote correct, that doesn't necessarily mean that you didn't get a higher score than them, because law school final exams are designed to not actually be able to be finished. So you don't have to spot every issue. You don't have to make every argument. You don't even have to come to every correct conclusion, if there are any correct conclusions, that is, because you could have accumulated enough points elsewhere to still have done incredibly well. So I don't want you guys to get in your heads or to have those conversations throw you for a loop. So please, 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 do not talk about the final exam after the final exam. Huge thanks to Reddit. That was so much fun. If you guys have any other questions about law school final exams, definitely drop them in the comment section below. And if you haven't yet, grab the free Beat the Curve guide so that you can make sure that everything that you are doing, all the energy and work you're putting in, is directly connected to the grades that you want to get on final exams. And I will also link 2 other videos here on law school strategy, final exam strategy, so that you guys can get the absolute most out of this. And if you guys are headed into a law school final exam season, I wish you the best of luck. You are amazing for doing this. You've absolutely got this. And I will see you guys in the next one.